Politicians have said it so many times, it feels like fact. Weapons of war, military grade. No civilian needs this on our streets. Beto O'Rourke stood on a debate stage and said it out loud. If it's a weapon designed to kill people on a battlefield, hell yes, we're gonna take your AR-15. Biden doubled down, said he wanted to ban guns that can fire 20, 30, 40, 50 shots. Then he went further and said he'd push to ban 9mm pistols too. One problem: the term assault weapon was never a military term. It was never a legal term. It was invented deliberately by a political lobbying campaign in the late 1980s to confuse you. I'm going to show you the documented proof. And by the end of this, you'll never hear that phrase the same way again. Before you click away thinking this doesn't apply to you, stop. If you own a firearm of any kind, this is about your property. If you don't own a gun, this is about the president being set for every right you do have. Here's the thing about language. Whoever controls the definition controls the law. Right now, there are an estimated 20 to 30 million AR-15s in American hands. Legally purchased, legally owned, legally used every day for home defense, hunting, and sport shooting. These are your neighbors, your veterans, your nurses, your moms. The government wants to reclassify those guns and those people as threats. And if they can do it to a rifle, they can do it to a pistol. They're already saying they want to. And then they'll do it to your speech, your finances, your medical decisions. This isn't a gun debate. This is a power debate. And you need to understand exactly how it started, because the origin story changes everything. Let me be fair here. The strongest argument for restricting semi-automatic rifles is a real one, and it deserves an honest answer. Mass shootings involving high-capacity semi-automatic rifles produce more casualties. The data supports that. When these weapons are used in mass shootings, more people are killed and more are wounded per incident than with other firearm types. The moral logic is straightforward. If a class of weapons makes mass violence more lethal, restricting civilian access to that class reduces harm. That's a coherent position. It's also what most people on the other side genuinely believe. They call those guns military grade and weapons of war to anchor that argument. If the guns are built for the battlefield, they don't belong in a grocery store parking lot. That's their logic, and they say it with conviction. That logic only holds if the premise is true, and the premise is a lie they built on purpose. Let's start with the term itself. The U.S. Army defines an assault rifle as a selective fire rifle. That means it can switch between semi-automatic and fully automatic fire. Machine gun capability. That's what soldiers carry. The AR-15 can't do that. It fires one round per trigger pull, every time. That's it. The M16, the actual military rifle, has a fire selector switch. It can go full auto. The AR-15's lower receiver doesn't even have the third trigger pin hole required to install an auto sear. It's physically, mechanically, legally different. Drilling that hole would make it an illegal machine gun under federal law. Not one military in the world issues purely semi-automatic rifles as standard infantry weapons. So by definition, the Army's own definition, the AR-15 is not a military-grade assault rifle. Then where did that phrase come from? It came from a boardroom. Here's a documented record. In the late 1980s, gun control advocates needed a new strategy. Full auto machine guns were already heavily regulated under the National Firearms Act of 1934 and nearly impossible for civilians to obtain. So they turned their sights on semi-automatic rifles. Rifles that fire one shot per trigger pull, the same as most handguns. The problem? The public didn't want to ban those. They were too common, too normal, too clearly defense and purpose, so they rebranded. In 1988, Josh Sugarman, a prominent gun control lobbyist and executive director of the Violence Policy Center, put it plainly in internal strategy documents. I'm quoting directly. The weapon's menacing looks, coupled with the public's confusion over fully automatic machine guns versus semi-automatic assault weapons, anything that looks like a machine gun is assumed to be a machine gun, can only increase the chance of public support for restrictions on these weapons. Read that again. They knew the public was confused, and they planned to exploit that confusion. The 1994 federal assault weapons ban was the result. And when the government's own researchers evaluated it, the National Research Council, not the NRA, they found it produced no clear impact on gun violence outcomes. Zero. The ban also banned features that even the Violence Policy Center, a gun control organization, admitted were purely cosmetic. A pistol grip, a flash suppressor, a folding stock. None of those changed how the gun fired. They just made it look scarier. But the definitional shell game didn't stop with Congress. In 1998, 4 years after the ban passed, the Clinton ATF went further. Without any new vote in Congress, they unilaterally banned the importation of 56 semi-automatic rifles. Their justification? A reinterpretation of the sporting purposes test buried inside the Gun Control Act of 1968. The sporting purposes test was originally designed to block military surplus weapons. The ATF quietly expanded that definition to cover any semi-automatic rifle that could accept a detachable magazine, even rifles that had been legally imported for years. No vote, no debate, no legislation. One bureaucratic memo wiped out 56 firearms from the legal market. That's not a law. That's a bureaucracy rewriting the rules mid-game because the democratic process wasn't moving fast enough for them. Same playbook, different agency. Same goal, shrink the definition of what you're allowed to own. One rule, one memo, one redefinition at a time. Now fast forward to today. The courts are catching up. In June 2025, Justice Kavanaugh wrote that AR-15s are in common use by tens of millions of law-abiding Americans, the same legal standard that protects the handgun you keep by your bed. A federal district court conducted a multi-day bench trial and found that criminal use of AR-15s in mass shootings is the exception, not the rule. And in January 2026, the Department of Justice sued Washington D.C. for its AR-15 ban, calling it an unconstitutional violation of the Second Amendment. The lie is unraveling, but it's not dead yet. If you're finding this useful, subscribe now. I need your help because there are thousands of people who need to hear this, and this channel is how they're going to. Here's what the military-grade myth actually accomplishes from a policy standpoint. It hands government the power to define which arms are protected and which arms are not. That is the ballgame. Once bureaucrats control the vocabulary, they control the ceiling on your right to self-defense. And unfortunately, this isn't just Democrats. 3 former Republican presidents, Ford, Carter, and Reagan, signed a letter in 1994 supporting the assault weapons ban. Establishment Republicans have been complicit in eroding this right for decades. This is a power issue, not a party issue. The non-aggression principle says that no one has the right to initiate force against you. The Second Amendment operationalizes that principle. It guarantees your capacity to resist force when it comes. But there's a second angle here that doesn't get enough attention: property rights. When a government bans a class of firearms retroactively, it destroys the value of legally purchased private property without compensation. That's a taking. And when you attach red flag provisions to these bans, stripping ownership before any conviction, you've eliminated due process entirely. This isn't hypothetical. It's already happening in California, Maryland, and Illinois, and it's spreading. The Supreme Court is going to take a major assault weapons case. Kavanaugh said so in June 2025. The circuit courts are in open conflict over the AR-15. That ruling will either codify civilian rifle ownership or gut it, and it's coming within the next term or two. If the military-grade label survives constitutional challenge, watch what happens next. Magazine capacity limits go national. That affects nearly every standard configuration pistol in America. Biden already said he wanted to ban 9mm. That's not speculation, that's a direct quote. Then comes registration, because you can't enforce a ban without knowing who has what. In every historical case of civilian disarmament, the UK, Australia, Canada started with a registry. The domino isn't the rifle. The domino is the vocabulary. If government can call a semi-automatic rifle a weapon of war to strip it of constitutional protection, it can call anything a weapon of war. Your free speech threatens social order. Your financial privacy enables crime. Your bodily autonomy conflicts with public health. The logic doesn't stop at guns. It never has. First, get precise with your language. Every time someone says assault weapon or military grade in front of you, correct them. Specifically, calmly, with the facts you just heard. The AR-15 fires 1 round per trigger pull. The military M16 has full auto capability. They are mechanically different weapons. The term assault weapon was created by lobbyists in a boardroom in the 1980s. It was created to exploit public confusion. Here's the documented proof. Give that to them. That conversation, repeated by you, in your kitchen, at your church, at your range, is more powerful than any cable news segment. Second, contact your state legislators. Know the bills, know the names, show up. Third, go to shesright1776.com and sign up for the newsletter and grab the free downloads. When the Supreme Court takes this case, you need to be informed the day it happens, not 6 weeks later when the damage is done. And subscribe before you go. Share this video with one person who still thinks assault weapon is a technical firearm term. It's not. It's a political weapon, and they've been pointing it at your rights for 30 years. The founders carried the same muskets as the British Army. Parity with government was the entire point. They understood something that the political class hopes you never will. The Second Amendment was never about hunting. It was always about this. I'll see you next time. Bye.